It takes a minimum of 5 years to release a vaccine and another 36 months, 3 years, to deem if this vaccine is safe on the human body. So in them 3 years, when people are going for the trials of a vaccine, any vaccine, it gives them 3 years to correct what our human bodies are reacting to. Making this vaccine mandatory, isn't that against our human rights?
You're completely right when you say it normally takes a lot of years, but not in normal circumstances. You don't have every scientist on the planet working for a vaccine for one thing. In this case, we did. And Dr. Lloyd has just explained, millions of man-hours went into this, the same amount of man-hours that would go into any other vaccine. It was just done over a compressed amount of time. So, yes, it is.
I want to go back to Danielle's point, Doctor, just to see if you've got anything to add to what Carol said, because it's important. The argument is, and we don't know how this vaccine will affect my body in 10 years' time because it's only just come out, fundamentally.
I think I think she argues a good point, is that the long-term effects of any new drug or any new vaccine, that there are going to be long-term sequelae that we don't know about. But the evidence so far, and that goes back to my previous point, is that there are remarkably few side effects. We had some issues with, if you remember, with Pfizer to begin with, we were worried about allergies and things, but the data just hasn't borne that out. And now Pfizer, we're just giving to anybody unless they've got an obscure reaction to a very, very, very rare molecule. Okay. We've had absolutely no problems with the Pfizer or the AZ.
Okay, let's get some more calls. Sorry, Doctor.
It's a very good point, but
okay.
I'm afraid I would still argue for mandatory vaccine.
Up until December of last year, I worked full-time in A&E. I caught COVID in the second wave. The week before we were having vaccinations at our hospital, I caught long COVID-induced postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I am still off work. Many of my colleagues have long COVID. Millions of people are getting long COVID. Being unvaccinated increases your risk of not only dying, but catching long COVID, which adds even more additional strain onto the NHS services. So I've had all 3 of my vaccines now. Some people with long COVID who've had their vaccinations have seen that their symptoms have disappeared. Unfortunately, that isn't the case for me. But personally, I think mandatory vaccines now should be brought in.
I have a huge amount of sympathy for you, and this pandemic has wrought such disaster on so many people. I had a terrible year of it myself last year. There's no doubt that this is a nuanced debate. I'm not emphatically coming down on one side or another, and I have huge sympathy for people like yourself. All right, I have huge sympathy for people like yourself who are putting your lives on the line, on the front line. But this is a clash of rights. You have the right reasonably to be protected, but people also have the right, I think, to decide what goes into their own body. We do not want to. You're shouting. We don't want to move to a world where people are banned from eating food if they're obese, because if you're obese or if you're an alcoholic, then you are endangering lives by stripping.
You keep on saying the same thing. It's just.
Well, you keep on attacking me.
Because you're wrong. Your human rights in a pandemic should take second place to society. You have a societal responsibility.
You do have a societal responsibility, but it shouldn't be imposed by law.
Poor doctor here.
Sorry, doctor.
This has become one of our viewers now, just watching.
Sorry, doctor.
We can see your expression, David, and we can only say thank you so much for giving us your precious time today. Thank you. And giving us a lot to think about as well. God, there we go. Always the way.